When You're Angry and Don't Know Why, A Buddhist Guide to Hidden Suffering by the Backyard Buddhist. There are days when I wake up angry, really angry. Nothing happened. Nobody said anything offensive. No catastrophe occurred overnight. No argument is waiting for me in my inbox, and yet the irritation is already there. It's in the shoulders, it's in the jaw, it's in the way the tea doesn't taste right. It's in the way every minor inconvenience suddenly feels personal. If you've lived long enough, you've probably experienced this. A rage that arrives without invitation. An anger whose source you cannot identify. And perhaps the most frustrating part is that the mind immediately begins searching for something to blame. Someone cut me off in traffic. My spouse said something careless. The world is falling apart. Politics, religion, the weather, the neighbor's dog, anything will do. The mind desperately wants a target. But what if the target isn't the cause? What if anger is arriving from somewhere much deeper? The Buddha's teaching on the second arrow. One of my favorite teachings appears in the Pali Canon. The Buddha describes a person being struck by an arrow. The first arrow is unavoidable. Pain happens, disappointment happens, loss happens, illness happens, grief happens. But then he says, most people immediately shoot themselves with a second arrow. The second arrow is the story, the resentment, the resistance, the demand that reality be different than it is. The Buddha says, when touched with a feeling of pain, the uninstructed worldling sorrows, grieves and laments, he feels two pains, bodily and mental. From the Salatha Sutta. When anger appears without a known cause, we often spend all our energy searching for the second arrow while remaining completely unaware of the first. Something hurts, something is afraid, something is exhausted, something feels threatened. But because we don't see it clearly, anger becomes the mask. Anger as a messenger. Many Buddhist teachers have pointed out that anger is rarely what it appears to be. The late Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, when anger manifests, continue to observe deeply in order to understand the nature of your suffering. Notice that he does not say destroy anger. He does not say suppress anger. He does not say shame yourself for having anger. He says understand it. This is a profoundly Buddhist move. Western culture often treats emotions as enemies to conquer or symptoms to eliminate. Buddhist practice treats them as teachers. Uncomfortable teachers, certainly, but teachers nonetheless. If rage suddenly appears, the first question is not, how do I get rid of this? The first question is, what is this trying to tell me? The ghost beneath the anger. Sometimes the source is obvious, sometimes it isn't. I've noticed that anger often emerges when something much softer is trying to surface. Fear, loneliness, shame, grief, disappointment. The ego would rather be angry than vulnerable. Anger feels powerful. Grief feels exposed. Anger feels active. Fear feels helpless. Anger feels righteous. Sadness feels naked. So the mind puts on armor, and that armor is often rage. The great Tibetan teacher Pema Chodron once wrote, nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what we need to know. I found this painfully true. The anger that keeps returning is often carrying a lesson I keep refusing to learn. The storehouse of yesterday. Mahāyāna Buddhism offers another fascinating perspective. In Yogācāra teachings, our experiences leave seeds in what is called the Storehouse Consciousness. These seeds remain dormant until conditions ripen. An old hurt, an old humiliation, an old fear, a childhood wound, a forgotten loss. Years may pass, then suddenly something seemingly insignificant triggers the entire pattern. We become angry, not because of the present moment, but because the present moment touched an ancient wound. The reaction seems disproportionate because we're responding to more than what is happening now. We're responding to accumulated karma, not punishment, conditioning, momentum, habit energy. As Thich Nhat Hanh often called it, habit energies. The old tapes begin playing, and suddenly we're arguing with ghosts, looking directly at the fire. The Buddha never taught us to hate anger. He taught us to know it. This distinction is crucial. When anger appears, try sitting quietly, not to eliminate it, not to fix it, simply to observe. Where is it located? Is it hot, heavy, tight, moving, still? What thoughts accompany it? What fears accompany it? What stories accompany it? Zen practice often asks us to sit with experience before explaining it. The mind wants answers. Practice asks for presence. Very often, if we sit quietly enough, anger begins to reveal its true face. What looked like rage becomes grief. What looked like hatred becomes fear. What looked like resentment becomes heartbreak. And what looked like certainty becomes confusion. The compassion hidden inside anger. This may sound strange, but anger often contains a distorted form of compassion. Something inside us cares deeply. Something believes harm has occurred. Something wants protection. Something wants justice. The problem is not the energy itself. The problem is the ignorance surrounding it. The Buddha compared anger to grasping a burning coal to throw at another person. Before it harms anyone else, it burns the one holding it. Yet the energy beneath that impulse can be transformed. Compassion is often anger purified by wisdom. The bodhisattva does not become indifferent. The bodhisattva becomes clear. The energy remains. The hatred dissolves. No self, no enemy. Perhaps the deepest Buddhist teaching regarding anger comes from understanding non-self. Anger thrives on division. Me against you, us against them, good against evil. But when we look closely, these boundaries become difficult to find. The person we're angry at is also suffering. They too are conditioned. They too are driven by causes and conditions. They too are afraid. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it changes how we hold it. The great Indian master Shantideva wrote, "If there were something called anger that could be controlled, people would not suffer from it. People act from causes, conditions, ignorance, trauma, habit, just as we do. The more deeply we understand this, the harder it becomes to hate." Sitting in the ashes? Sometimes anger disappears quickly. Sometimes it lingers for months, sometimes years. Practice doesn't guarantee immediate peace, but it does allow us to stop adding fuel to the fire. When I find myself angry and unable to identify why, I've learned not to trust the first explanation that appears. The mind is a terrible detective when it's angry. Instead, I try to sit quietly, breathe, feel, listen, watch, and ask gently, what hurts, not who's to blame? The first question leads toward wisdom. The second often leads toward suffering. Eventually, what seemed like a raging inferno often reveals itself to be a wounded heart asking to be seen. And perhaps that is one of the great gifts of Buddhist practice. Not that it removes our humanity, but that it teaches us how to meet our humanity with compassion